But
Cue music.
cue music.
I read the news today, a two-bit expose of the same old story that I heard yesterday. Yeah, it goes the headlines, man. They all just go to plan. They're framed and fixed and rigged, and you know they're all just spam. So buckle down, look right in. It crawls its way under your skin. Just got by on the things they spout. And you should give me that good news. Because I'm tired of the same old shit.
There's a lot of good morning, everybody. It's Friday, and welcome to the grounds with Giles and Jones.
That's Giles, and I'm not Jones.
He's not Jones. Jones is on special assignment today, making sure that he can still keep himself moving. Welcome back, everybody. We weren't here last week. Hope everyone had a great week. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. We actually had the weather for it, except on the actual 4th. That was a pretty interesting day, wasn't it?
It was. We were down in Prophetstown with Frank and Christina.
Okay.
We spent the weekend down there, and it was a beautiful couple of days. But the rain we drove home in, we got hit by a storm in Rockford that everybody on the interstate had their. We're coming up 39 to Rockford, bringing 20 over through Marengo. Everybody had their flashers on. We were moving about 10 miles an hour. It was.
But you made it through, right?
We did. We're here, and when I look back at it, it really wasn't that important.
Right. And that's that's funny you say that, because the topic today is how important is it really? Like in the grand scheme of life, these things that we're looking at. Some people will say, will it matter in 5 minutes from now? Will it matter in a year from now? Will it matter? And, this is an interesting subject that, a lot of people I don't think really dig too deeply into. How important is it really? I mean, is it going to make that big of impact for you, your life, people?
When you think of a sporting event, you're watching, doesn't matter for professional right down to your, kitty kickers or t-ball. Right, the umpire, the referee, the umparee. That's that takes them all. That takes them all into
correct word, umparee.
Makes a call that you don't agree with, and boy, you're just screaming at that referee or that young umpire.
Parents don't do that, do they?
Oh, they do. I have witnessed it for 45 years, and at the end of the game, how important was it? How important was that call? A terrible call if your team wins. Well, it didn't matter. Your team loses, and you dwell on that stupid call for the next several hours, if not days or years.
Right.
We lost the Super Bowl because
of, right. And it's one of those things that do you really look at the repercussions of what you're worrying about and what you're maybe striving for? Kent and I were talking yesterday, and it was kind of funny back when he was, first out of school and just getting his first job, because we were talking about that with my son. We went to that Cask and Barrel last night.
Yeah.
And we were just chit-chatting, and he's like, oh, back then, what was really important to me was having that, $500 suit and the $100 tie and driving the Cadillac. And he's like, now if I, back then it was important to me, but now it's not, because now I wouldn't have to work if I didn't have that $500 suit.
We had that conversation coming into this morning as he's off to a special assignment. And I still have that suit from my first job hanging in my closet. I haven't fit into it for years. It would probably be better off in Goodwill, but it was an expensive suit, and it was it's so important. You got to have the blue suit, you got to have the blue tie, you got to have the power tie.
Power ties, yeah.
Everybody, I look at it today. If you see me in a tie, somebody's died.
Right. I think that's the way it is with a lot of people these days.
So, but how important is it? How important is President Joe Biden's decision to, release some oil so gas prices will go down?
I wouldn't know, because here on the grounds we talk about peanut butter to politics, but no politics. So I wouldn't know how important it is. But
how important is it? I'm not getting into the political side, but how important is it at the end of the day, whether it's that decision or whether it's some other local yokel making some decision. It's terrible what happened in Highland Park the other day.
Oh, yes.
But
Moment of silence for those folks, please.
doggone it, when we look at how important is the training for our fire departments to respond to that type of stuff. They train for it, they train for it, they train for it. Oh, that's never going to happen here. How important is it now?
Well, it's not super important, obviously, but I mean, it's of the utmost importance, really. I mean, we don't know that things like that are going to happen at any point in time. We have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So how important is it to train for something like that? Unbelievably important. How important is it to dwell on that bad call in that game? Not so much.
Right.
But we as humans are human, we don't differentiate greatly on what things we should spend a lot of time on. And unfortunately, what we spend a lot of time on and dwelling on, thinking about important, is the stuff that really doesn't matter. The stuff that does matter, we just kind of glaze over.
Yeah. And can you think of a time in your life where something seemed really important, major important, and you're looking back at it now going,
don't mean jack shit.
What was
right?
What was I thinking?
Well, and that's and the way things are going today, and probably have been always. We always say how things have changed so greatly in the world, but they haven't changed as much as people would have you say. It's just things are a lot more in our faces these days. Unfortunately, these days, what people worry about and what people think about really is what social media and everyone out there in the rest of the world is telling us that we should think or want to believe or feel to try to fit in. And that's unfortunate because we've kind of lost that individuality of how important is it? Well, the question is really, how important is it to me? How important is it to me and my family and to my immediate people around me? You do have to think about others in the world and everything on your decisions, stuff like that. But, how important is it to me? And how is that going to affect me today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year?
Look who's with us, Don.
Oh, my God. Good morning from Texas. Don, how are you? Haven't heard from you in quite a while, my friend.
Don, you click that link and you can join us right here on the grounds.
Yeah.
And if you stay tuned, I will be down by you July 18th through the August 8th. So I'll be there almost 3 weeks. So if we can't find a time to get together for coffee, you just don't love me anymore.
I think that's a warning sign to you, Don. He's really going. Now you got to think to yourself, yeah, how important is it to you to see Coach Papa when he's in Texas?
Coach Papa's going to Texas.
Yeah. There's a lot of things for me personally growing up that I thought was just like, if I didn't have this, if I couldn't make this happen, that it would be the end of the world. Right. And as I get older and see how things are going, it's like, why did I ever even worry about that?
Look who's here.
Oh, look at that. He's even alive with us. You want a beer? Oh, you got a little shadow from your screen. I thought you had a little goatee. Do you have a goatee? Holy cow, look at you. He's trying to cover up that beautiful chin.
He's trying to be like Scott Giles, man.
Nobody wants to be like me. Except for me.
Yeah, I missed you guys. Yeah, I dialed in last week and I couldn't find you. And when you said this morning, we weren't here last week, I said, I guess that's probably why.
Yeah, we weren't here last week. I actually took, I'm getting older. I'm not invincible, as I want to believe. I had meniscus surgery last Thursday.
Oh,
been there, done that.
Yeah.
Mine's coming up.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I was the biggest baby freaking out about going in to have it done.
Yeah, if you're going to have knee surgery, that's the best one to have.
I'm already walking without crutches. I mean,
I bet you were the day after.
Downstairs. Yeah. I mean, I am super, super, super pumped. I'm excited for the future because it's doing very well. But that was why we were not here last week, because I was convalescing and, my family would not let me get up off the couch. And so, that was very important to them to make sure that they held me down. So I appreciate that. I love you guys. If you're listening this morning, I know you're probably off to do your thing.
Did you keep the handcuffs or?
No, but I will keep the crutches. I will.
You probably sell them in one of your shops, though.
Yeah, right. There you go. It could be a prop at Fantasy Factory, which, by the way, thanks for bringing that up, guys. Today, the grounds is brought to you by the Reese's Barkery and Pautique over at 1313 North Riverside Drive in McHenry. stop in today. Mention you heard us on the show. We'll give you 10% off on your purchases. But also something to think about. And, we just had all the great 4th of July, celebrating our Independence Day, taking care of those pooches, making sure that they're calm during those fire, which we did sell a lot of CBD to take care of those pups.
Oh yeah.
It's such an amazing thing for, just calming them down. Cause I have 2 of the 3 dogs that I have are pretty crazy when it comes to fireworks.
Staying with the theme of the show, how important is it that they stop by Reese's Barkery today?
Super important. But actually, it's always important just to take care of your animal. But I mean, as far as a lot of people don't even realize how much better it can actually have your dog be and feel during times of stress like that. Even if you have separation anxiety, not just from firework anxiety, but separation anxiety. CBD is a wonderful, wonderful thing to give to your animals. Stop in, guys, 1313 North Riverside Drive. We'd love to give you a one-on-one. Bring your pup in the store or cat as well. Talk to you about the benefits of feeding the type of foods that we do sell and the CBD products that we do. So thanks, guys. We appreciate it. So Don, talk to me. Tell me what's going on. How important are things out there, right? That in the grand scheme of things.
What's important really right now down here is air conditioning. We are. I don't think it's any surprise it gets hot in Dallas-Fort Worth area, but it's been unseasonably hot. We've had, I don't know, at least almost 10 or 12 100-degree days. I think today they called it a weather alert day, high of 105 with the feels like temperature of 110. So based on our discussion today, I would say air conditioning is important right now, because it's everybody is. I keep hearing everybody around here saying, yeah, it's early for it to be this hot for this long. So I can only wait till what happens in late July, early August. But we're doing fine. We're doing great down here. So
I'll put my weatherman hat on. It's going to be hot.
It's going to be hot with a chance of hot. And
yeah, well, and it is kind of funny when you hear it on the weather. They act kind of surprised about it, and it's like, no, I'm not. I lived here 25 years ago. I remember it got hot. So, but apparently, it just is a little unusual to have so many 100-degree days this early in the summer.
Yeah, well, we've been actually pretty good here temperature wise. My son and his girlfriend just came back from a nice little jaunt out in Houston, and everyone's like, "Why did you go to Texas in the middle of summer?" It's like, well, because we've never been there and we had the opportunity to go. And, the funny thing is, man, it was hot. I'm like, what did you guys expect? It's freaking 80 degrees there in wintertime, so what are you going to expect in the summertime?
It's only 84 right now, Scott. Yeah, it's cool. It's only 84 right now.
So it's like winter for you guys today, right?
It's the mornings are the only time where it's kind of
the reason I'm going to Texas is to see Don Civicent. And
then you're just going to see your family on top of that,
right? Just my son and his wife are having a new baby. So while I'm down there visiting Don, I'll check out the new baby.
Right.
There you go.
And that's very important, right? And that's kind of flies into the topic today. How important is it really? I mean, for you to get in your car or fly and go to Texas to see your kid and to see them having a baby. A lot of people be like, oh, that's whatever. They're having a baby, right? But how often in your life can you say you get to do that for your family? Not a ton, unless you got a ton of kids and they're popping out babies like a factory.
Well, this is our 12th grandchild, so we've had this opportunity quite a bit.
But it's still very important because that grandkid was not born yet, right? So this one is important because this one might, and being there for your family, right?
Right, because as you know, a newborn baby doesn't do anything.
No, but you're there for you're there for your son and daughter-in-law, right?
Well,
I mean, and you're for yourself somewhat.
And to get a couple of bike rides in. I love riding in the Texas area. I've got a
because it's so cold out.
I got a new bike. I got a new bike waiting for me when I get down.
Oh, I was going to say, is that the one that's not on the back of your car right now?
Well, I'll be taking that one along because my son's friend is a engineer and he does bikes on the side, fixes bikes.
Gotcha.
So I'll take that one down for a tune-up, but I'm getting a new street bike. Okay. My son he watches Marketplace like a hawk, and he found a pretty decent deal on a Giant for me. So
gotcha.
But let's look at self-importance.
Right.
One of the things, our kids get in trouble, and we have a tendency to bail them out. Well, what if we didn't? It makes us feel important to be able to take care of them and help them out of the trouble. Well, what if we didn't help them out? Would they survive?
Well, hopefully, I mean, and that's a good one, and that's a case by case situation. But and that's something as we as parents, you kind of have to analyze at that point, like how important is this to get them out of this particular situation?
Yep.
Is it going to help them, hurt them in the long run? I mean, and that's for each individual is a little bit different, right? But really, how important is it to teach them that lesson or to let them learn that lesson on their own?
Yeah.
And you don't know. And us as parents, I mean, I know for me, I don't want to say I've coddled my kids, but I've tried to let them have some of the bullshit I've gone through to kind of help them push that and let them experience their own stuff. But that's important to me at this point, right? Because of what I've been through. But to them, it might not be.
There's a tipping point of the lesson, though. You get to the point, well, they're going to lose their house. Well, then you step in and you do something. But I know we had to figure it out, and sometimes
we got thrown to the lions, right?
Oh,
I mean,
several times.
Still do. Do.
It's a good thing I took a lot of thorns out of a lot of paws growing up.
Yeah.
Well, I think to me the key to that question, Scott, is that where I think people make the mistake is the coddling them when they're very young, because that's when you need to start letting them making their own mistakes, because the consequences are less than losing your house when you're older. I think the kids that get to the point where they're losing their house are the kids that didn't get that lesson taught to them when it was in a little bit more of a safe environment where the consequences weren't as severe. But think about how severe you thought certain consequences were when you were a kid. Something being taken away from you as a kid was a massive consequence. But if you learn at a very young age that if I do stupid things or dumb things, I'm going to have some consequences in an environment where it's really nothing, because, getting something taken away from you a week is literally not important. But the message of that can be helpful in preventing much bigger mistakes as kids get older. If they're taught it at a young age, they're probably going to go into young adulthood and adulthood a little less likely to do those things, because they have been taught not this specific thing leads to bad, but I've been taught very well that if I do certain things that are not right, I will pay a price for it. So I'm not going to do
consequences. The consequences of what's happening, right? And
right. But if we never teach our kids that at a young age, why would they all of a sudden figure that out on their own at 17, 18 years old if they've never been taught that when they were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old?
Right. And then, it just gets worse as they get older, because, a lot of kids might think, well, mom and dad's going to bail me out.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done everything.
Many times when our kids were growing up.
What's that?
I saw that many times while my kids were growing up, where there was just zero consequence for young children talking back to their parents. I saw kids flipping the bird to their parents with zero consequence and snapping at them like with hateful rhetoric and nothing. I was like, wow, I would just sit there just kind of stunned sometimes.
That's getting worse and worse, I feel, as time is marching forward. A lot of these parents today, whatever, they just, whatever, I'm just going to let the kids walk on me. Oh, by the way, good morning, Shayna. She just texted in, said, right, Texas Shayna looks good on you, Don.
Shayna, my favorite listener of the grounds is Shayna.
So of the grounds and every other show on 216.
Shows, but
I mean, if you talk about somebody who's been caught in the net, I believe Shayna has been caught.
Shayna has been caught. She should be in here with us every show. She's all about it. I love Shayna.
That link's right up there, Shayna. All you got to do is click it, and you can join us right here on the grounds this morning.
Yeah. But I think, like you're saying though, Don, the kids and teaching. Yeah. The consequences early on when the consequences are much smaller, that they're understanding and, explaining to them, how important was it really to do that?
Yeah.
And how is that going to affect you down the way when they're a young kid? It might not affect them anywhere near as much as if you get to that point to where you're going to lose a car or a house or a significant other, because you haven't been taught that every action has a reaction and what that consequence may be, and how important it really might be to answer to that or address that or just let it go to the wayside.
Well, and one of the conversations I think a lot of young parents don't have is how are we going to discipline our children? And as the children come up, if the parents came from two different backgrounds, one a very strict, one a very, complacent or whatever you want to call it, background, and then the kids come up and now, they discipline very differently. We had that conversation very young on how we were going to deal with our kids with that. And we were always on the same page. So they couldn't come in and say, "Hey, Mom, can I go to the neighbor's? Dad said it's okay," because we actually had the conversation that
kids know to play the parents, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I remember as a kid, if you got away with stuff, did that lead you to doing less stuff or more stuff?
Well,
depended on what you're trying to do, right?
I mean, if you got away with stuff, you kept trying new stuff, didn't you?
And eventually you didn't get away with stuff. And then there was a time my brother was in the Navy. He had a Harley 350 Sprint motorcycle. And I love that motorcycle, but it was kind of off limits unless I got the okay from him to ride it. Well, track practice one Saturday, as we're getting close to the state track meet, my dad was in the fields, my mom was working, and I thought, this is my chance to take that motorcycle into track practice. And I started it up. I got a half mile away from home and it died. Well, that thing had so much compression, you couldn't restart it. You couldn't kickstart it at that point. You had to like push it up a hill and get it going down and pop the clutch. I did that all the way to town. And for me, our farm was about 6 miles out of town. So I pushed it up and down several hills. I popped the clutch. It didn't work. I wound up pushing it all the way to the high school for track practice. When I would have just pushed it a half mile home and driven my car, it would have been fine. Well, Coach hated motorcycles and everybody else was done with track practice. And he worked me out, just focused on me. And that was not a happy day for me. And then I had to call my mom and she had to bring the pickup in and load that up when she got off work. And I got it home and Dad's sitting there and he's madder than a wet hen. He says, "You fix that motorcycle before you put it away. You make sure it runs." Well, when you work on a motorcycle, the first thing you do is turn off the gas. And as I went to turn off the gas, it was already off.
And I knew that was coming. I could feel that one, but I want to let him finish that story.
And as I turn on the gas and
it starts right
fixed it.
And, it was one of those things. But how important was it that I ride that motorcycle?
Well, it's really important that you turn on the gas because that didn't work.
Right.
That's important. Yeah, that's funny.
As a kid, that motorcycle, getting on that motorcycle and the freedom today, and I've lost no fewer than 10 friends have died in motorcycle accidents. I don't want anything to do with them.
So was that was an important lesson then, right?
Well, life was the important lesson that took me to this point. But at that moment, and we talked earlier about the referee's call or the play by the an opponent, and how parents just they go nuts over it. Yet that altercation taught your son how to deal with life, and you're getting in the middle of it.
Yeah, Coach, I wanted to follow up on that. When I saw that, my youngest daughter played high school and club volleyball, and I remember one of the years of that, I tried to speak to parents and simply said, can this year, can we let the players be players, the coaches be coaches, the officials be officials, and fans just be fans? Because it was another time in my life where I just saw, it made you wonder, what's it like at this kid's home if this is how their parents deal with them in the public at a sporting event, whether it was yelling at the player or yelling at the coach or yelling at officials. It was, I used to ask myself, where do you work? What do you like when you go to work every day? Because
probably completely opposite. Because
yeah, probably
like that, or those are the ones that this is the venue that they can actually kind of let their asshole-ish out, if you know what I mean.
But the real issue is
their kids' joy of sports because of that.
Chuck Ibben wrote a book called Chemical Brain Freeze.
Yeah.
And if you haven't had the opportunity to read that book and to understand what happens in our brains when these things are going on, I've talked about it for years. If parents have their kids in athletics, there's a high percentage that they were athletes, right? And your body goes through several physical and chemical changes as you're preparing for competition. Athletes can never perform in practice the way they do in the competition, right? So their body's going through this, but then your body is burning off these chemicals. That's the fuel that allows you to perform. But now you, as a parent who was an athlete, your body has gone through those same chemical changes, but you got no way to burn off the chemicals except being stupid.
Right. So you gotta, I mean, I get that one because I've never yelled at other coaches or anything like that, but I was one that was very involved. My son was, I'm sure, embarrassed to a certain point when I was there, because I was the vocal parent, kind of like the coach from the stands, if you will, you know what I mean? Guard them, run them, that type of stuff. And I did it because I wanted to see them excel, not because I was in sports when I was younger and I had nothing to burn off. I was excited about the game. Right. I was kind of living vicariously through them, but I feel, from my standpoint, that I knew that cutoff, right? Like where too much was enough, right?
Right.
A lot of parents these days, not sure that they do. They're not letting kids, be kids and get their natural consequences down, like you said. It does take me back quite a bit to when the kids were younger. You talked about teaching them at a young age about the natural consequences. Like for us, how we raised our kids, you're talking about discipline too. My kids, when it came to homework, we didn't make them do it. Because if they didn't do their homework, they got in trouble at school. So it was a natural consequence. Hey, you get in trouble at school, then you have to deal with it. Then if you're in trouble at school, then you're going to come home and you're going to get in trouble. Nuts, right? So they learned, hey, I'm giving you the opportunity to do it. Step up. And they learned from that consequence. And I think it's worked out pretty well so far in their lives. Obviously things change on a day-to-day basis, and it's different for everybody depending on your kid and, how their makeup
How many kids do you have?
I just have two.
Two
wonderful children.
Well,
three if you count me.
Children.
If you count me, three. But they are really good kids. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. They've given me, they've pushed me quite a bit.
He has 3 kids, 2 wonderful children. Yeah.
Two wonderful children, 3 kids. I love you, Don. I love you.
I always talk about, my third one, and he's amazing today, but he was God's way of saying it ain't that easy. The first two, my daughter was Female Athlete of the Year. She's got on with a master's degree, working on a second master's in counseling now. My first son comes along and he's doing, great things. And the third one comes along and we had some issues. And I remember there's one day I was standing over, by the garage with him after I bailed him out of literally bailed him out.
Yeah.
And I said, son, I've always said you're not stupid, but at times you do stupid things. He's like, I know, Dad. I said, no, now I really believe you're stupid.
You've convinced me.
He said, because I just don't understand. Well, today he's got, 3 wonderful children and he's, got a great life going, but it took a lot more work than it did for the other 2.
Yeah. Can you do me a favor and click on Shayna's thing there? Go ahead, Don. Go ahead. I just wanted to
say, Coach, our discussion about parents and that being former athletes, it just reminds me of that wonderful old adage: the older we get, the better we were.
Right. Well,
so true in sports.
Yeah. Shayna jumps in here and says, as part of an advanced sales course we brought to a Toys R Us to observe master manipulators, in parentheses, otherwise known as toddlers. Right. And it was educational. It's amazing how we are participating in teaching people what will be tolerated by kids or anyone else at home and in public.
That's why she's my favorite guest. That's why she's my favorite listener.
Yeah. Well, and she just makes a really good point there. How you learn and when you learn. You start, I'm going to use the word conditioning, right? You're kind of conditioning at a young age to.
Well, Scott, how many times have we seen toddlers in a grocery store throwing a fit and the parents don't do anything?
Or they give them what they're throwing the fit about.
Right. And then we're surprised when they're 22 years old and they throw a fit when they don't get their way. Yeah. Shocking. It's just shocking, isn't it?
When I was with Edward Jones, they had a 529 plan competition. Well, I'm very competitive. 529 college planning, investing. So I would go out and walk in the Dominick's, the Kmart, the Sears, and the Walmart. We're all together there in McHenry at that time. And I'd walk through and I'd just listen for a baby crying somewhere. And I'd kind of gravitate over toward that. And I say, that kid's going to be a good soccer player someday. He's got whining down to a science. So that was my opening.
Can he flop too?
And then I'd ask, where are they going to college? Well, what do you mean? They're like 2 years old. I said, well, it's not too late to plan. Here's my card. And blew the competition out of the water with that. But it was always about listening for the crying toddler in the building. And then that was, to me, that was dollar signs.
Plenty of prospects probably, right?
It was, there was plenty of them.
Yeah.
But, you look at that child, how important is it? How important is it that they have that, green Gucci doll? Oh, I
It's
got
not.
it. They got to
It's
have.
not.
To them, it is.
But at that point, it is, and that's when we have to decipher, what is important. And as adults, when they're kids, that is for us to decide what is important for them, right?
But at what point do we stop that? Going back to what we said earlier,
right?
And
What point is it when that kid, I guess when that kid shows the fact that they are really understanding the whole concept of
40.
Yeah, well, no, 54. 54 is probably when it happens, and that's different for everybody, and that's why we say, really, how important is it in the grand scheme of things? Is it really going to matter? I mean, we talk about the kids, we talk about the toys. I mean, and just all the crap that people are bitching about today. How important is it to bitch at somebody, about whatever rule just got passed that really you have no control over? Yes, it sucks. Not a whole lot you can do about it at this point, but when your chance comes to do something about it, to step up and do something. You hear people we've talked about in the past couple episodes, like, we were talking about gas prices and price gouging and stuff like that. How important is it? Well, it sucks. It's important because it's putting a big financial burden on a lot of people, but in the grand scheme of things, how important is it really? You're going to bitch about it and not do anything, right?
My freshman grandson was in the car with me last night, and he's like, Papa, why is everything so expensive? And I'm like, well, Jess, you got to look at the price of gas right now. He said, with the price of gas, everything has to be transported somewhere, and gas is 2 or 3 times higher what it was a year ago. He said it costs 2 or 3 times more to transport it, so that price gets passed on to you. When you're paying at the store, you're not paying the real value of what you're getting. You're paying the wage of the person who put it on yourself. You're paying the wages of the manager. You're paying the transportation guy. And he's like, oh, I never thought of it like that. I said, yeah, that's why we have to get out. And
you explain that to him. And then does he understand, the importance of not dwelling, right? And I think that's the thing that a part of the show that I really want to bring out is, how important is it to really just kind of understand that, it sucks, and to let it go. I mean, because is it really that important? Yes, it sucks. Yes, it's harming some people. It's putting undue duress on a lot of people, but
well, I think, Scott, the term that I remember, an old boss told me, and it's not, he didn't create the phrase, but that old phrase, control your controllables. Determine if you can control something about it. If you can, do something about it. But if you can't, I mean, we spend a lot of time. Frustration comes from trying to choose an option that's not available to us.
Yeah.
But some things like gas prices feel like we have no control. And I guess as we sit here this very moment, we probably don't. That's a much broader conversation. But I think sometimes you do have to just, if you can't do anything about it, there's no use in getting all riled up about it, because all it does is make you crazy. But if you can do something about something, just do it. It certainly makes you feel so. I always say you're not stressing, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing, is kind of looking at it and going, and it's easy to look back and say that wasn't really worth, complaining about or worrying about. And that's why the question is, how important is it in the grand scheme of things? I mean, you're going to spend more money on gas right now, but you can't change it. Yep. Right. You can't do anything about it. So you have to grin and bear it, basically, or figure out a way around it to make things different, and not let it put you into that downward spiral, which is what's happening a lot these days. Right. And people are making things that are not in their control, and that, I can't say isn't important, but it's something that you can't control. So how important is it to really, worry about it and make a big freaking deal about it and cause yourself more pain and strife, when it is what it is, and you're going to have to move forward and do what needs to be done to help that out when you have that opportunity.
How important is it that we have this show?
It's very important that we have this show, because I feel that this show, goes out to all of our listeners, which we really appreciate, you guys. And if we're making people think, just one person changing their day, it's super important to me.
Yeah, Don, you brought up a point. One of the leadership principles in the military was decisions need to be made at the lowest possible level. Right, the general looks at the overall map. The private looks at the tree on the ground. Yeah. Right, who's making the decision? The CEO should not be buying paper clips, and the janitor shouldn't be running mergers of the corporation. But the importance that we place on things, most of it, as you said, it's false importance. What is it? Fear, false evidence appearing real.
Right.
Well, where we think we can make a difference. We'll be down in Texas or around our kids with their kids, and we will a part of our spousal relationship, which I will not name, will work very hard to impose her will on some things.
April.
For 1 week, there's 51 weeks we're not there. How is
Grandma going to try to push her way to live on everyone while she's there for that week?
Well, it might be me, and
it might be there. I like that. It might be me.
I just got to be clear. She might be listening, although I don't think she has listened to any of my shows since the original.
I'm going to tell her now.
Guys. But
we'll make sure she gets the word right.
The point is, we as grandparents really have the opportunity to sit back and go, "Hey, watch this. I know what's going to happen," right? And instead of trying to be the parent. And I know with one of our grandsons, I blur those lines all the time because his father is not the best father figure in the world. His real father, not his stepfather. So I need to step in sometimes, and I overstress my importance at times. There's times I just need to be his grandpa.
Well, and it's something that's important today that you feel is very important today might not be anywhere near as important, as quickly as tomorrow, but at that point in time, that's what's in your head. That's what's in your space. And there's something that's driving you to, let's just say obsess about it or, make it something more than what it is. I mean, how do you hear that, that comment, making mountains out of molehills? Is it really that important? And that's what we taught the kids is it really that important? Is it something you want to waste your time on? There's a lot of other things out there that, you could, waste your time on or put your time and effort into. This might not be one of them, but how do we get to that point? How do you know that?
When I ride my bike south on the Prairie Trail and I get by Stearns Woods, there are 4 hills up there. I call them 132, 134, 137, and 148.
Is that how long it takes you to get up?
No, that's what my heart rate gets to going up these hills. And that 148, I am in the lowest possible gear, working as hard as I can to get over that hill. When I come back north, I go over to walk up and come back. I don't go back up those
down,
hills.
Yeah.
It's because it's such a challenge. Shayna says, Coach, the move towards a crying baby was just what the parent needed to change the way they were seeing the child in the moment. The opportunity offered to do something associated with future success. Thank you, Shayna. That was I was just trying to make money. No.
Yeah.
But you did it in a helpful way,
true.
Coach. So.
I still, when I hear a crying baby close to me in a store, I'll look at an older one, not the little ones, but I'll look at him and say, there is no crying in the store. And a stranger saying that, the kids will just shut up and the parents are like, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like, don't step in, but thank God. Hey, good morning, Beth. Beth Myers. She's ringing in today and says, good morning. I think it's important to teach your kids at a young age that there are consequences for their actions. Absolutely. Parents can't threaten and then not follow through on the punishment. One of my favorite stories of my daughter growing up is the time my oldest daughter put a very expensive Barbie book, $30 back in 2000 in my cart after she said she put it back. I told her that she stole it from the store and me, since I told her I bought it without knowing it. I actually didn't buy it, but people aren't teaching consequences a lot of times these days because they will threaten the kids with, don't do this or, stop doing that or this is going to happen. And it's an empty threat, and then the kids learn that if they push long enough, that's probably not going to happen. Right.
When my kids were little, I was in the Army. So their punishment was push-ups. And,
oh no.
It was just like, push-ups. My son, my older son, the good son, as I tease
I like
him,
that. The older son, the good son, not the prodigal child.
He did a lot of push-ups, and one day he was about 4 or 5, and I got home and my wife was just fit to be tied. And I goes, "What's wrong?" She said, "He didn't take a nap." I'm like, well, let me go talk to him. So I went and I said, Sean, I said, you really need to take your nap. Your mama needs a break during the day. You need the rest. It's really important. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to punish you today, but if you don't take a nap tomorrow, you're going to do 250 push-ups.
Oh shit!
And
I'd go to sleep really quickly
and
personally.
he's like, okay, Dad. And I get home the next day, and my wife is just fit to be tied. I'm like, what's wrong? You didn't take a nap. Well, Dad, I said, remember we talked yesterday about how you're going to do 250 push-ups. He goes, yeah, Dad. No, I'm thinking that's a lot of push-ups. I was just trying to scare him. He had never done that many before. I said, so here's what we're going to do: a double or nothing day. Right? Not going to punish you today, but if you don't take a nap tomorrow, it's going to be 500 push-ups. Do you understand? Do you know what 500 is? Yes, Daddy, I do. And I says, all right. Got home the next day, and she was fit to be tied. And I went, he didn't take a nap. No, I didn't take a nap. I went in and I said, all right, son, you have one more chance. 3 strikes and you're out. If you don't take a nap tomorrow, it's 750 push-ups. He's like, all right, Daddy, I'll take a nap tomorrow. And I got home and my wife was fit to be tied. And I went in, I brought my daughter in, who was 3 years older than him. And I said, I want you to stay in here with him and count 750 push-ups, and neither of you come out till he's done. I couldn't watch it. She said he did it. To this day, I don't know if they colluded on me. And it said,
but at least you followed through on that.
I had to at that point, right? Because I tried everything. I tried negotiation. I tried numbers, but
it's hard. You can't negotiate with kids, with young kids, as a general rule. You are the parent. You tell them what has to be done, make them do it, right? I mean, kids aren't logical at that point. Trying to negotiate with them, I think, is a losing proposition. This is my house. This is my house. These are my rules. You don't like them, even at 6, move out.
I was having a problem with my 16-year-old son, the younger son, and I called my dad and I said, I know I was a handful, Dad. He said, if you would have done anything different when I was 16, what is it? And he said, instead of threatening you with the 2 before, I would have hit you with the damn.
I would have used it.
I would have been more effective, right?
At some point. Well, I like what Shayna says here, the look.
The look.
Right? Some parents have that look that the kids interpret very young and others don't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, apparently I have the look. Because I don't know why, because I feel like I'm a kind of a teddy bear, pushover with a lot of things, but I not just with my kids, but with, employees and stuff like that. Like I have a look, like I'm feared and I don't want to be feared.
Speaking of teddy bears, do they sell teddy bears at Reese's Barkery in Pautique?
We sell a lot of different, teddy bears and toys and stuffed animals and stuff like that.
Because one of the things is important is the financial support we receive here at 216 Net. So this show can go on. And we get that from Reese's Barkery and Pautique. Give a call at 815-363-7297. Or just stop in at 1313 Riverside Drive.
Yep. 1313 Riverside Drive. We are open 7 days a week, guys, and your animals are welcome in there. And we do and appreciate the fact that we actually can advertise with you guys and help keep our animals healthy. I mean, that's a good thing too. How important is it really to feed your dog good food? Well, right? Just like eating good food for us, it's very important.
If you don't feed them good food, they're going to go out and chase squirrels or.
Well, they'll end up usually just like us. We don't eat well. You're going to end up you're not in the hospital, but you're going to probably most likely be unhealthy and end up at the doctor's office more often. It's a proven fact. What you put in your body is how your body runs. It doesn't matter if you're, human, animal, what have you. So that's when you say how important is it really in the big scheme, it's huge.
Yeah.
And you can see that throughout our world right now that, apparently that's not really important to people to eat right.
Well, and it wasn't important to Shayna's husband to develop the look.
Did he develop the look though, Shayna, because of you or because of kids?
He never developed the look. So I'm assuming that you needed to be.
Oh, he never developed the look. I got you. Were you the one, Shayna, that had the look to, quote unquote, put everyone back in their place? Just kind of look over and they're like, oh shit, she means business.
Yeah, she's smiling now, but I know what's going to happen.
She'll be asking her husband if she's got the look.
Well, my wife said I had the look, and that's why she married me. What is it? What's it? Who's that? Who sings that song? That's a song too. She's got the look. I can't think of it. If anyone knows the name of that song, put it in. But, Shayna always. All right, Shayna.
So we're gonna have to have you come on so you can demonstrate the look, so we know what that really looks like.
That looks like, yeah.
So many things that seemed so important at the time the only way we know if it was really important is history, is looking back.
Right.
And so making that decision today, Don or Scott, how do you make a decision that this thing is important enough that I need to go down this path, or this thing's important enough that I need to stray from this path and go somewhere else?
Well, that's when you're kind of looking inside on each case by case, situation, really. I mean, and evaluating what it is. But unfortunately today, I feel that a lot of people aren't taking the time to actually evaluate,
Yeah, but I was asking you specifically, not a lot of people. How do you make that decision? You own several businesses.
right.
How do you make a decision that you want to buy this business? How do you make a decision it's time to close this business? How do you decide if something is important enough that you're going to invest time or money into it?
Well, there's a lot of different criteria, Coach, on that one. I mean, it's kind of a loaded question to a certain point, but kind of what I was starting to say is
it's what I do.
I know, yeah, right. Well, I mean, but it's a case by case situation. With me, I just have to evaluate basically all the different criteria of what I'm looking for. Let's say if I'm looking to, buy a business or start a business, I have to look at, what my end goal is, right? Where I'm looking to go, where how I'm looking to get there, when I want to get there, and evaluate those. And when you're doing a business like that, that's the typical criteria, if you will, to look at and to evaluate if it's a good move or a bad move. But like in just regular life, for everybody, I'm going to kind of change this up and open it up a little bit more, is we're not looking at it from, down the way. I think a lot of people's decisions are made, in the moment, and not looking at, down the way and how it's going to affect things.
Mhm.
And, really evaluating that. And that's why we're saying, how important really is it at this point? It might be the greatest of importance right now, but tomorrow don't mean jack shit.
You've made some interesting investments. You started business. You came in, McHenry's a pretty conservative area. You come in with a cannabis shop, right? And a cannabis shop, all of a sudden it takes off, and then you start the fantasy factory, right? And you go there. Then you buy a pet shop.
Trying to cover all those recession-proof businesses, recession-resistant, and we'll see if my gamble paid off with the way the economy's going right now. So,
well, it looks like you've done well
Yeah.
with it, and you've invested in a few other businesses. You're part of the Vixen.
Yeah.
You've got a few other things going on, home inspections. You're one of the busiest guys I probably know, and sometimes you sit back and say, well, how important is that? There's a sales book called out, and Don, I'm sure you're familiar with this, called Go for No.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And basically it says it takes 9 no's to get a yes. And it says, go for no, go, push that person until they tell you no, so you can get on to the next person and keep going till you find your yes. But I think the most important person is the person you're talking to. And with each and every person you're in conversation with, if you can listen close enough to see what they want, you can close every deal. In a perfect world, we would, but how do we communicate that importance? You're in the world of fundraising for a very unique project, and I love it. I think it's amazing what you do.
So thanks. Well, I wanted to speak to your question about the decision making, and first of all, Roxette. She's got the look. That's who it was.
Okay. She's got the look.
I had to Google that. I did not know that.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that.
But I could take the time. But and Scott, I would assume that you use some of the words that I'm going to say to make decision: wisdom, discernment, experience. You started to touch on how people make sometimes rash decisions. I think way too many decisions are made on emotion and not thoughtful consideration. One of the simplest things I do in life is just literally on a piece of paper, the plus, I call it plus delta, not plus minus, but the old piece of paper, what are the pluses of this? What are the negatives?
Right, the pros, the cons.
Yep. Yeah, the pros, cons. And because at least when you're doing that, you're not doing it in the emotion of everything. You're doing it thoughtfully with some consideration. But, what the word wisdom is one of those, I think a lot of people don't even kind of never even hardly think of that word anymore. But we need to be wiser people, and when we make decisions, and be more thoughtful about it. And I think that's where, in simplest terms, I think way too many decisions today are made on emotion, not logic and thoughtfulness.
I agree. And Alex, good morning, Alex. By the way, love the fact that you're chiming in
Good
with
to
us
see
today.
Alex.
Yep. So Alex says, and this one really, this kind
Alex.
of hits home, right? I mean, for everybody, if it doesn't feed my checkbook, my soul, or my family, it's not important anymore. And then he says, fuck the noise of everything else. And that's kind of what we're getting at here.
He didn't put the
Oh, he
in
said
there.
that. Yeah, he said F beep CK, the noise of everything
He
else.
bleeped himself. He bleeped himself.
Right? But that and
What's
that's
up, Alex?
and that's kind of what I was kind of coming down to with the businesses too, right? I mean, money is not the ultimate goal. Unfortunately, when I was younger, and until probably the last 10 years, money was very important to me because that's the way I was raised as far as what I saw, right? But in the big grand scheme of things, we need money. Money is a tool, but how important is it for me to make a ton of money? It's not. What's important is to help feed my soul, to help feed my family, to make me know that I'm making a difference in somebody's life, whether it's mine, my family's, somebody else out there in the world. And that's the noise that Alex is referring to, is everybody worrying about what everyone else thinks, right? And telling them they're pushing on you maybe what they feel is important. And then we start to adopt those feelings, right? Well, it's important to them. It's got to be important to me because I want to be part of an accepted society. And that's bullshit.
I experienced, Scott, working in both past sales jobs where I sold very expensive stuff, and then in fundraising. So you're always trying to deal with wealthy people. My experience, most of those people, the reason they got wealthy wasn't because they were looking for money. They were those fortunate people that found out a way to make a living at something they would do because they love it, and somehow turned it into money. And I've always been, I hate to use the term, but a little bit envious. They found that spot where they made money at something they would just do getting up every day because that's what they love to do. And I think that's a blessing to some people that find themselves in that position.
That's an absolute unbelievable blessing, because it's hard for people. Not a lot of people can say they do what they love. They do something that can afford them a living so they can do what they love after that. Because, I mean, realistically, most people don't love their jobs.
Yeah, I loved playing golf, but I wasn't good enough to make a living at it.
I was at a training the other day, and the lady said, do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. If you do what you love in the service of people who love what you do, you'll never want for a...
Right. Well, when I was growing up, my dad always said, do what you love and the money will follow. Right. And to a certain point it is. But unfortunately today it's put on everybody that, money, 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 money. You need money to survive.
Money.
Yeah. Right.
Show me the money.
Right. But it's become the importance, right? How important is it really to make a ton of money? It's not, because money does not bring you happiness. Money in a lot of ways, guys, believe it or not, will actually bring you more headache and more sorrow, because once you get to that point, you've got, people wanting what you have, people trying to take what you have. And then you also, if you have it, you have a lot more stress and a lot more things you have to manage. So life is not easy for somebody that has a bunch of money. If you know people a lot of people that that have a lot of money on the outside look happy, but on the inside they're really miserable.
Most HR surveys, Scott, I mean, over 40 years, as long as someone's salary does kind of meet their basic requirements. Obviously, you can't put food on the table or whatever. That's a game changer. But anybody that has a job where it meets their basic needs, money becomes about fourth or fifth on the list of most important things in that job, because there are so many other things that lead to people's happiness and satisfaction and things. Again, you have to have certain needs met, but once those are met, the money one becomes fourth or fifth for most people in terms of their job satisfaction.
Motivating. So Shayna, I'm going to take this.
You're going to do it, aren't you, Pete? You're going to go there, aren't you, Coach?
This might be a swerve, but how are you guys handling the more contentious political topics, since it seemed refraining outside your inner circle seems to have gone out of style? It went out of style a long time ago. When we first launched the Two Bald Guys show that morphed into the DDOE, Daily Dose of Encouragement, and 21/6 The Net, we made the decision that we weren't going to put the news on, we weren't going to talk about the weather, and we weren't going to talk about politics. And it
There's
is
enough of negativity out there, right?
there
We
is.
don't want to be negative here. We
So-
want you to question stuff, right? But we
Right.
don't want you to be negative about
So
it.
we're not going to get caught up in that, even though there's a lot of discussion, and it may create a following. That's not the following we want. We want the following that's here with
Oh yeah,
us.
we could go crazy in here all day long and talk
without
about it,
question.
but that's and that's a good one. So really, how important is it? I would rather talk about really good, most important things in life that mean something that we can control, not what we can't control in this political arena.
So Alex has written War and Peace here.
Uh-oh.
The problem most people have is they want to change the system. I've tried doing that in my local community a while ago, in a small business community, of thinking differently and doing things differently. I had the hard lesson learned: you'll never change the system.
Right.
It's like getting hit in the head by a hammer, and there's people that love to get fed by that system, and they're not changing. So I learned that I had to create my own system. I enjoy the phrase, I tried to get a seat at the table until I learned to fuck it and build my own table.
Yeah.
Once I
love
did
it.
that, I was happier, stronger, more work ethic, etc. And everyone that was used to the system and saw success outside the system got upset, because how dare I do something different? The circle of friends got smaller, but the pocketbook got bigger. Weird. I will never again try to fit into someone else's construct. It may be my own. Now, this is exactly how America was founded.
Mhm.
And exactly
Right.
what he's talking about, because we didn't.
He didn't want to sit at everyone's table. He wanted to do it for himself.
Right.
Right. And that was important to him, to not to succumb to, peer pressure or outside pressures of what they think you should live. Right. And I was guilty of that. And still some days I find myself guilty of, living to and doing things on how I feel somebody's going to react to me. Right. How important is that? It has zero importance. How my family reacts has much more importance, or how it's going to affect my family has much more importance. But
yeah,
I mean, even the best, all of us, the best of us out there are, in the back of our heads, always going, whoa, what do they think? Whoa, why do they think that? And how are they going to think about me? Screw that, people. Think about what you think and what you want and what you need.
Well, and I know Alex, and Alex has done it his way, and I think that's the way it should be. If this way isn't working for you, go do option B. And Alex has built something, and I think he's supposed to be committed
Who
to
was
that.
that other guy who did it his way?
He did it his. Yeah, we're doing the songs, but I want to go back to and I don't want to get into the political conversation because we don't have time. But I'm going to differ a little bit on this issue of we don't talk politics because it's negative. Our challenge, and I think our responsibility, is to learn how to have political conversations that are not negative. We've run away from the conversation because it's uncomfortable, but also we've run away from it appropriately at times because some people there's no use, no value in having that conversation. But I think it's critically important that we start having those conversations with adults, again, people that are not doing it on emotion, but doing it on wisdom and discernment. And sometimes it's hard to find those people, because I love those conversations, but they're too few and far between.
I agree.
The problem with it, Don, it's the political world is so divided right now that a Democrat can't go to breakfast with a Republican and talk about the weather.
See,
I can.
Like the fact that he says
I can go to breakfast with anybody and talk politics.
See, I don't like that. I don't like that comment that he says a Democrat can't go to breakfast with a Republican. I relish it, honestly. I don't talk politics on the show because that's not what we really want to do. But the problem with the world right now, and it drives me freaking nuts, is I want to have that conversation with you guys. I want to hear what your feelings are and how you come to that decision. And, and I might not agree with you at that point, but I'm going to respect you, and I'm going to leave that conversation going, you know what, Coach, you pissed me off because I think you're stupid in that respect, but I respect you for having that and having the balls, so to speak, to feel that way and to stick to your guns.
How important is it I punch him in the face?
There you go. How do we change it if we never talk to each other? How do we change that? How do we change that dynamic if we never talked with each other? Yeah.
Well, and this show is a perfect example, right? I mean, you hear me on here. 1 minute I'm talking about this, the next minute I'm waffling, going, wait a minute, because I'm reevaluating. Yeah. You bring something up, going, I've never thought about it that way because I live in my own little world, right? Sure. And I am trying to do things for me. But then when I hear your guys' conversation, I'm going, Okay, hold on. Let me think about that for a second.
We have an issue with your father. I think he's identifying as your mother right
Yeah,
now.
he is. Yeah.
Bob, how are you today?
Yeah,
Be who
good morning.
you are. And there's a phrase
Yeah,
today
be who
that
you are,
says-
not who you want others want you to be.
There's a mantra today that says you do you.
Yeah, yep.
You
You do.
do
That's
you.
been around for a while.
We are in the final minute. Bob, I don't believe it took you this long to check in.
No,
But,
he's been listening. But Don, that's the thing we need to get back to with the political conversations. I want to talk to you about it. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, conservative. When it comes to stuff like that, I vote for the right person. So I'm not one party at all. But being able to sit down and talk to you, right, about it, that's really important.
That's the
That's
biggest
super
problem.
important, to be able to sit down and actually take your lickings, if you will, and to listen to somebody, because because they could have been brought up a completely different way, and being able to come together as a society and meld things, work together on both sides to bring things together, to have a common interest or to have a common goal to get together, and not, we've got the cancel culture. That those are people that are ignorant in my mind.
Yeah.
Because you don't agree with me, I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you go sit in your own little world.
And Shane just says that it's tough if you don't fit in one camp. I crave intellectually rich conversation, but not everyone is capable.
Amen,
And
sister.
one of the things I love about this show is the hour is gone before you know it.
I
even
know.
started.
It feels like we just got here.
And it's that time to kind of start winding things
Yep,
down.
it is the end of the hour, guys. We want to thank you for tuning in today to our show at 216 The Net, The Grounds with Giles and Jones, with today's Coach Papa. Like we always say, we out here at the store, the show is we want to go out there and change people's lives one day at a time, one person at a time. Go out today, love somebody, help them out, understand that they have tough decisions to make. Help them make those decisions, and don't cancel them because you don't believe in what they have. Talk to them, love them, be a good citizen to yourself, to your family, and to the world. It will get better, people, but it is up to us, because you know what? That is important. Love you all.
Love you. This is what I am, Coach Papa, and I do approve this message.
And
Get
I
off
am
the bench.
I am Scott, and I approve every message as long as it's mine.
Back.
Guys, we love y'all. Thanks for
Have a
tuning
good
in. Have a
weekend,
great
everyone.
week. We'll see you next week. Don't forget to tune in all week long for all of our shows every day here at 216 The Net. Thanks for getting caught in the net, guys.
He's Giles. I'm not Jones. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Don. Have a great day, bud.
Sure, you can stuff your face to commercial breaks. Another bullet